I'm Katherine Gypson for AAM Insight. Today I'm here with Ambassador Peter Galbraith, former UN Deputy Special Representative in Afghanistan. Ambassador Galbraith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, I'm very glad to be with you.
Thank you. Let's start with the Obama administration's strategy. On that new strategy, you've said, quote, "I'm against this because it is really part of a counterinsurgency strategy. And a counterinsurgency strategy requires a credible local partner. In these circumstances, President Karzai isn't a credible local partner, so I don't think these additional troops can accomplish the mission that they've been given." Can you elaborate on the difficulties of the U.S. partnering with President Karzai? And particularly, do you think Afghans see President Karzai as a liability?
First, I approve of President Obama's strategy in all respects except for the increase in troops. But the strategy is much more than the increase in troops. It is a real focus on Afghanistan. It is an effort to improve coordination of civilian activities and of the activities of the donors. A focus on a few specific economic activities like agriculture, which is where most Afghans earn their income. It involves a recognition that Afghanistan and Pakistan are part of the same conflict, a real focus on Pakistan on strengthening its civilian government. It has involved increased mobilization of resources to both countries. It has produced significant success in Pakistan, a diplomatic intervention that helped save the civilian government in March, and now getting Pakistan to focus on its domestic terrorism problem, the Pakistani Taliban. So there's a lot to it that I think has been very successful, and there was a lot of momentum behind it. And then came the August 20th elections, in which were characterized by massive fraud on behalf of President Karzai. A counterinsurgency strategy requires a local partner. Let me explain. The international troops can secure the population area. That's the heart of the counterinsurgency strategy. Then you need then an Afghan army to come in and eventually to take over the duty of securing that area. You need Afghan police to provide order, and you need an Afghan government which can provide public services, honest administration, and win the support of the population. Well, the Karzai government has demonstrably been unable to do that. Over 8 years, it's been characterized by ineffectiveness, toleration for corruption, and now it's in office as a result of massive fraud. It's not seen as legitimate by a significant part of the Afghan population.
And give us a sense of, when did you first know that the electoral process couldn't possibly be conducted fairly?
On the election night, election day, the UN set up an office around the clock to receive reports. We got more than 80 pages of reports of incidents of fraud and irregularity. But the most striking thing was we collected information on turnout. Now, given how dangerous it was in parts of the country, particularly the South and the East, we didn't have people in each polling place. That wasn't humanly possible.
Right.
But we collected a lot of information from our sources that clearly showed that in provinces like Kandahar, Helmand, Khost, Paktika, there was a very low turnout, under 10% generally, maybe even 1 or 2%. At the same time, a very large number of votes were being reported. In parts of Kandahar, in the city itself, it was about 30%. Outside the city, it was about 60%. And in some districts, it was more than 100%. Well, clearly, those were phony votes.
And you went to Qaid, the lead UN envoy in Afghanistan, and warned him about this.
I warned him at every stage of the process about this. And at every stage of the process, Qaid overruled me. So when I was pushing to close down the ghost polling stations, he said, "We're not to discuss polling stations." When we collected all this evidence of fraud, he said, well, you weren't at the polling stations counting the number of people voting, which was obviously true. How do you know the turnout? Well, of course, I couldn't tell you it was 10% versus 5%, but I could tell you that it
Sure.
was under 15% and not 70%. But so he prohibited us from sharing this data with the Independent Election Commission, with the UNDP electoral staff, with the Electoral Complaints Commission, which was the UN appointed body that was supposed to be the second check on all of this. And then he did not approve of the fact that I'd intervened with the Independent Election Commission to simply get them to stick with their published guidelines. His view was that the Independent Election Commission was that the Afghan body responsible for the election, and whatever it decided was something that the UN should support.
And did you have the sense that once you went and warned him that the situation would escalate as quickly as it did and lead to your leaving the UN mission?
I never imagined such a thing. I mean, I never imagined that the UN could fire a senior official for being concerned about fraud in an election that was paid for by the United Nations. It never in my wildest dreams occurred to me that that would be the case, or that the UN would proceed with a dismissal without ever talking to me about the substantive issues. And then once I learned I was going to be dismissed, I wrote a letter detailing it, and they never investigated the issue. It was extraordinary.
Now, after you left Afghanistan, there were many accusations that were leveled against you, particularly for your role as an advisor to the Kurdish regional government as you were negotiating the Iraqi constitution. And your critics noted that you had significant ties to Kurdish oil interests, even as you were advising U.S. officials, negotiating oil contracts, and writing op-eds about Iraq and Kurdistan. Now, you've said that you see no conflict of interest when you were acting as a private citizen and you held no official positions when you had these Kurdish oil interests. If there was no conflict of interest, why weren't you transparent from the beginning?
Well, let me address the substantive issue.
Mm-hmm.
I was a private citizen. I did not negotiate the Iraqi constitution. I advised, or I was asked by the Kurdistan leaders to provide informal advice, and they, of course, knew of my connection to a Norwegian company that I was working for, because I had, well, they knew it, and because, of course, I had brought the company into Kurdistan and helped arrange their contract. My business connections, again, which are quite normal as a private citizen, were known to the Kurdistan government. They were known to the Iraqi government because I actually represented the company in a joint committee with the Iraqi Ministry of Oil, and they were known to the U.S. government. So the notion that this was somehow an undeclared interest, well, to whom do you declare these interests? Which incidentally is also a normal business relationship issue, is covered by confidentiality agreements. But they were known to the people who were involved, and I was not in. I want to emphasize, I was not involved in negotiating the Iraqi constitution. I wasn't even in the room when it was being negotiated.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Ambassador Galbraith. It was
My
a pleasure
pleasure.
to speak with you.
Great.
Thank
Great
you.
to talk to you.